Hello, this is Public Charter Schools Oversight and Accountability Policy Analysis by Lily Bowers. During this presentation, we will be going over the facts of the issue, the supporting evidence, some considerable alternatives, my final recommendation, and possible outcomes from implementing my final recommendation. Charter schools are unlike their traditional public school counterparts. They operate with a higher level of autonomy, and this can often lead into inconsistent oversight and financial accountability. So, the oversight of accountability standards in charter schools is regularly found inconsistent or simply inefficient, and they seem to be mismanaged or underperforming compared to their public school counterparts when we're talking about educational quality and the transparency of their auditing system. Over the past 2 decades, there has been a rapid growth in charter schools in our country. And this has led to some differences in how they are enforced, considering that they are under less scrutiny than traditional public schools. For example, Idaho charter schools have a huge disparity in how they perform. They have some of the highest performing schools, meaning they are outperforming public charter schools, but they also are part of the lowest performing schools, meaning they are far below the standards, academically speaking, of these public charter schools. This policy analysis is to understand why they are mismanaged and insufficiently held accountable, and why there is such a disparity when it comes to academic performance. Why do we have some performing at the top of their level and the other half performing at the very bottom of the barrel? There is evidence that supports the financial mismanagement, more specifically, of charter schools. Between the years of 1995 to 2017, the Department of Education, which is a federally funded organization, funded $3.9 billion to states. Their goal was to open and expand charter schools in the United States in the hopes that it would increase educational quality across all states. From 2006 to 2017, we saw that 5,286 charter schools received this federal funding, and they were in, as you can see, in the map, we have schools that received various amounts of funding. In blue, you have ones that received 0 to 9% funding, such as Wyoming, Utah, and Oklahoma, New York, Maine, and New Hampshire. In green, you can see the states that received 10 to 19% of funding from that. And this was in like Idaho, Colorado, Alaska, and North Carolina. Orange and red, above all else, receive the most amount of funding, which we see none in red and the rest in orange. The ones in tan received no funding whatsoever. North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, just to name a couple. The goal of funding all of these public charter schools was to, of course, increase educational quality and to give more opportunities for education in the public sphere. What we saw was a complete failure of these grant recipient schools. In 2018, there was a 40.5% failure rate. So of these 5,286 schools, 2,127 of those schools never opened or closed within the same year of them opening. This does a horrible injustice to the education system. Not only is that money being taken from public schooling to give to charter schools, it is also doing a huge disservice for their community. Because what happens when a public charter school opens and then closes that same year is it puts undue stress on the schools around it because those students still have to go to school somewhere. So then now what we see is schools that never opened, so students would enroll into that school, but then it never actually opened. They would then have to enroll into a public school in their district. Same thing if they closed within the first year. And so then we see an influx of students at public schools, which increases class sizes for students, which increases the teacher to student ratio, and it also reduces the amount of resources that we are able to provide per student. So then we are left with considering the alternatives. How are we able to increase oversight and accountability at charter schools so that they are increased in their effectiveness and their educational quality? There are three alternatives that I am going to talk about, and we will talk about 3 points on each of them. First, because these schools operate with a higher level of autonomy, it is important that they are audited more frequently. This means performance evaluations and performance renewals. Instructional materials need to be aligned with state standards. Graduation, including college and college admission rates, need to be well documented. When it comes to performance evaluations, charter schools have to align their performance progress along with state standards so that there is a very uniform way of being able to assess whether these students are academically growing or not. When it comes to instructional materials, they need to be aligned with those state standards. Although charter schools, again, operate with higher level of autonomy, they are able to hire people without certifications or teaching experience or teaching degrees. They may not know that all instructional materials need to be aligned with the state standards and the lessons that they are teaching. Being able to keep track of graduation rates and college admission rates shows us the successfulness of the program. Next, verify enrollment numbers. You need to compare the attendance to the school's enrollment numbers. Place verifiable attendance tracking in place and have parent and or student verification of attendance. What we see in charter schools is a fraudulent enrollment system. They will inflate their numbers to receive more funding or inflate their attendance to receive more funding. So placing verifiable attendance tracking to verify enrollment numbers is important. The third alternative is proper funding allocation. We need to have an oversight of the asset management, which would include any materials or equipment the school is buying. Budgeting records, including the accounting practices of the school. How are they utilizing their money? We need to have the original charter application that shows their performance goals and how they are making benchmark progress towards those goals through their funding allocation. The final recommendation is there needs a policy to be put in place that is the most effective solution and proper funding allocation with heavy oversight of grant and federal funds. So what does this look like? When you are increasing the oversight of federal funding or grant funding, you are maximizing accountability, minimizing this mismanagement of funds, and maximizing oversight. Of course, there is always going to be a financial loss when setting up any type of new program, but there will also be a financial gain, which you can see in this chart below. As you can see, the schools and the public education system has more to gain than they have to lose. With increased accountability, increased lessened mismanagement, and increased oversight, there are many positive possible outcomes, including transparency and compliance with state standards, student learning outcomes, program outcomes, and many more, including professional development of those teachers. Thank you for watching my presentation. If you would like to reach out, my contact information is listed here on this slide.